but it looks like everybody's here, so we'll call the meeting to order. Is there any unfinished business? Okay, seeing none, our new business for today is review of the International Mechanical Code and International Fuel Gas Code, all chapters.
Did we do the approval?
Oh, I missed the minutes, didn't I? Yeah, we better approve the minutes first. Excuse me.
And then Gretchen has one change to the agenda that you mentioned.
Yep, before approval, we are reviewing the International Mechanical Code and the International Fuel Gas Code. The agenda says the fire code, that's incorrect.
So if we've got a motion to approve the minutes,
Motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now on to our new business.
Fine. Morning, guys.
Morning, Doc.
Okay, we're going to be covering IMC and the IFGC. We'll start with the IMC. And Chapter 1 involves scope and administration. No changes were made. However, there are 7 amendments existing to Chapter 1 pertaining to and regarding jurisdiction, liability, fee schedule, and refunds. Staff recommends continued all existing local amendments in Chapter 1. Moving on to Chapter 2, definitions. I put in definitions, just a couple of them. Page 11. Commercial cooking appliance, and this was written in an attempt to define commercial, separating from domestic. And then the second one is on page 17, which is pollution control unit. And we'll go over that a little bit more in Chapter 5. Chapter 3, general regulations, page 23. Section 3039 is fireplaces in Group I-2, Condition 2 occupancies. And section was added and shall be in accordance with Section 901.4, prohibiting fireplaces in Group I-2, Condition 2 occupancies. Page 25, 305.4. Interval of support. There's amendment existing. Staff recommends continuing it, and it just states that it wants supports 2 feet, within 2 feet of every turn. Page 27, section 307.2.2. Drain pipe materials and sizing. Another amendment exists here, and it's just simply North Dakota State Plumbing. Any questions on Chapter 3? Chapter 4, ventilation, page 31. Section 401.2, ventilation required. Also has another amendment which staff recommends continuing, and it eliminates the blower door test. Also on page 31, footnote A was added, and it gives the requirements of table 401.5. Page 35. Section 403.3.2.4, system controls. Section was added and states, were provided within a dwelling unit, controls for outdoor air ventilation system shall include text or a symbol indicating the system function. Same page, section 403.325, ventilation equipment. Section was added and states exhaust equipment serving single-family units shall be listed and labeled to provide the minimum required airflow in accordance with ANSI/AMCA 210 and ANSI/ASHRAE 51. Same page, page 35. Section 404.1, enclosed parking garages. Item number 2 states standby at an airflow rate of not less than .05 CFM per square foot of floor area being served. Okay, my opinion, staff's opinion is that this is for the purpose of the inspection only. With unit heaters providing heat for the space, those fans will not be running continually. Any questions on Chapter 4?
On 35, the previous one, 403.3.2.5,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we have to be this picky, but, you know, when we refer to ASHRAE or ANSI, should we have a date of that? What date of that ASHRAE publication we're talking about? I don't know, because they change, you know, every year.
That should be in the book.
Okay,
So at the back of the book,
Yeah,
reference standard, and
Okay.
that should have a date on the book.
okay. And then this parking garage thing, Doc.
Yeah.
Little bit better explanation on that. So they're saying you have to have .05 CFM per square foot of the floor area served versus, which would require you to have like a little teeny ventilation unit that's providing
Well,
outside air all the
it's
time.
basically using the same fan, Dave, and it's operated upon detection at .75 CFM, meaning fully wide open.
Right.
But you got 5 unit heaters down there heating this garage space. Even at .05, you're going to have that opening and being drawn out.
Right.
I don't think the owner's going to be wanting to pay for that heat.
Yeah, I agreed. That's, okay, so I'm fine with that.
Okay. We move
Thank
on
you.
to Chapter 5? You bet. Chapter 5 is exhaust systems. Page 31. Oh, something happened there. That should have been page 41, excuse me. Any rate, page 41, section 5, I even circled that, by the way, I should have. 501.1, independent systems required. They added sections 505, requirements for domestic cooking operations, and then sections 506 through 509 for commercial cooking operations. Page 42, section 502.4.1. Hydrogen limit in rooms was changed to flammability limit in rooms. Page 42, sections 502.5 was changed to ventilation in battery systems and cabinets and is regulated by the International Fire Code and vented in accordance with section 502.4 of this code. Moving on to page 48. Sections 502.14 through sections 502.16.2.2. Sections pertain to motor vehicle operations, repair garages, and their ventilation requirements. The text has just been rearranged, basically. Page 49, section 504, exhaust installations. Added text, closed dryer ducts shall be sealed in accordance with section 603.9. Still on page 49, section 504.1, exhaust termination outlets and passageway size. Duct cannot be undiminished in size and must have an area of not less than 12.4 square inches, which is a 4-inch round duct. Page 49 and 50, sections 504.8.2, duct installation.
Doc. Slow down a little.
Okay.
On the previous one, closed dryer ducts shall be sealed. Haven't they always been required to be sealed?
They were, but they hit the code book.
Wasn't in there.
No, right.
Oh,
Well, you'll get into another one where we have an amendment that says that you can't use fasteners. So basically, well, how they've been sealing them was with tape, and it's not going to change, but
Right.
that was added into the book.
Yeah, because when you go to the joint seams and connections, they don't say that you can't use screws, which would be a typical mechanical sealing method. So there's another part that'll come back. and
Yeah,
say
the
you
code will
can't
say
use
that you
those.
can use screws, but they can only penetrate an
Right.
eighth of an inch.
Right.
Which would mean you'd be drilling a hole and putting a rivet in there 3 times.
Right,
So actually, we have an amendment to
okay,
throw that out.
thank you.
Mhm. Okay, page 49 and 50. Huh. Section 504.8.2, duct installation. And that's the amendment right there.
Okay,
Deleting similar fasteners that protrude more than 1/8 into the inside of the duct. That pretty much answers that. And then there was a new text added. It says, where where dryer exhaust ducts are enclosed wall or ceiling cavities, such cavities shall allow the installation of the duct without deformation. Any questions on that? Okay. Move on to page 51, section 505, domestic cooking exhaust equipment. This is going back to where the definitions was and whatnot. This section was added, and going back to the definitions, the code is trying to be clearer on the difference between domestic and commercial cooking ventilation requirements. This section is giving the requirements of domestic cooking appliances and the venting needs and the codes and standards which regulate them.
I have a question on that. Is the IMC residential? I always thought that the International Residential Code kind of covered mechanical for residential, and I'm just wondering if this doesn't seem appropriate in the mechanical code as far as residential.
Maybe apartment building
Yeah, and
with stove,
Well, other-
residential style equipment in it?
plus this did get brought up in the fire code because they added domestic cooking equipment for dorms as a way to regulate when they're putting in domestic type cooking in those dorm facilities. And then there was a requirement for smaller fire suppression depending on those specific uses. But it didn't cover all apartments. I remember being specific to college dorms.
You're correct, though. We used to kind of say commercial environment, commercial. So we would say type 1, type 2 hood. So this gets more into detail if they use that type.
Okay.
Trying to figure out where
Residential
it's
style.
needed.
They started putting residential appliances in businesses for training of cooking and things like that. There needed to be something in the code.
Okay, page 51, section 505.4, makeup air required. Staff recommends continuing the existing local amendment, which states only the amount of CFM in excess of 400 CFM needs to be made up. And of course, the change from section 502 to 502, 505.2 to section 505.4. Page 51, section 505.6, other than Group R, language was changed to read, in other than Group R occupancies where domestic cooktops, ranges, open-top broilers are used for domestic purposes, domestic cooking exhaust shall be provided. Moving on to page 56. Section 506.5.2, pollution control units. Section was added and states, it is a manufactured piece of equipment installed in a greased exhaust duct system for the purpose of extracting grease particles and odors from the exhaust flow by means of series of filters. There's about 15 codes that regulate that must be followed. The exhaust termination can be a nuisance to the public due to an odor. PCUs are designed to eliminate the odors. And I stated, so far I have yet to see one in Fargo. Any questions on that?
I think we had one at Sanford at one time, and they ended up taking it out at their kitchen.
They did have one?
I think it was a nuisance, so we took it out. But what it does is it's not just the odors, it got rid of the grease, so you didn't have grease falling on all the windows. So they're quite complicated.
Is that
and-
usually on the termination?
Yep. Yeah.
Nothing else is allowed? in
It came
the
up with
street?
an Applebee's, because Applebee's were the friendly neighborhood restaurant, and putting grease on all your neighbors' windows and cars and houses wasn't very neighborly, so they came up with those kinds of devices to get rid of the grease. And they work. They're just a lot of maintenance.
I was going to say, they got to be high maintenance.
Yep.
And they're not required by the code, then they're off.
Page 58. Section 507.2.6. Exception number 2 was added. Clearances to type 1 hoods listed and labeled for clearances less than 18 inches in accordance with UL 710 shall be installed with the clearance specified by such listing.
Do you understand that one, Dave?
Yes, I do.
I wasn't going to elaborate on that. Yeah. I'm glad you said
That's a
it.
good, I like that one.
So we like new code, and sometimes we're ahead of the game, but somebody found this and has
They have
been
been
using
around,
it.
though.
So if it's a new code, we'll allow people to use it under using an alternative methods design. So somebody in this room found this code previous.
Page 60, section 508.1. Okay, there's a amendment to this which states that short-circuit compensating hoods are prohibited. And staff recommends that we continue that. And then also, section 508.2.1 is another amendment, and it states compensating hoods shall extract at least 40% of the required exhaust airflow from the kitchen area. And staff recommends that we keep that also.
Could you define compensating hoods as it's intended in this section? Is that the, when we have the grill on the front of the hood, is that considered a compensating hood, or?
Yeah, yes it is. And, yeah, we got them in quite a few places, actually.
Right, and it's not, the idea of a compensating, the paragraph above, where we're prohibit short-circuiting, that was where you'd actually have a duct within the hood itself that would just short-circuit within the hood. That's where the makeup air would come, and I agree with that. I don't think those hoods ever work well. But the hoods that have the actual 18 inches of perforated laminar flow air that's in the front of them, be my opinion, I'm not necessarily sure that I agree with that the other 40% has to be made up from other equipment, because that is a good, basically what you're doing is you're making up that air for that hood, and if done correctly, it doesn't affect the operation of the hood. So I'm just wondering the 40%, where that came up.
And I actually
came from.
agree with that, Dave, because these hoods are designed to do exactly that. And in fact, that should eliminate even my smoking testing on the hoods.
Yep.
So, and I
Could
guess
we-
I really didn't take that in consideration, but we might want to make note of that too,
I think that should be.
to lose the
revisited.
amendment,
Okay.
discontinue the amendment. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Good point.
When this amendment
Yep.
was made, they just had the short circuiting hoods, and then they had the hoods that came in from the
Yep.
back. Remember when we used to do the back? And the problem is when they came in from the back, they would sometimes actually blow the burners out.
Yep.
And blow so the new kind, this amendment was made before those kinds of canopy makeup air things were invented, I guess.
So the 40% was to make sure that other air was coming in,
Right.
Yeah.
not
But-
just in
Right.
100%.
Right. It was made because if you don't do that right, and these are now made by manufacturers that have figured it out, if you blow air across a hood, you'll actually suck it, we've all seen it, it'll actually suck it out. And then so what you're trying to do where you're trying to compensate, it ends up causing a turbulence in front of the hood, and then the smoke would actually come out into the kitchen. The ones that they've made and designed these days, that particularly the ones that come with the hoods.
Yeah.
Trying
Like
to
I
do
said,
it yourself doesn't work, so. But if they come with the hood as part of, and I don't know if there's a UL for that, where you guys could say if they come as part of a UL or something like that, or as part of the hood.
We'll look at it again and put it on the list.
Yeah, but like I said, everyone that I go out and test, they work perfect.
I think they work good. What I don't like is if they don't put, I think they should be, you could maybe put something in there about they have to be tempered to at least 55 degrees, because blowing 30
there's no-
below air into that or 25 or whatever it is outside, without tempering it, I don't think it's a good idea.
But I think
And I think
most of
they're
them do, though.
they're almost always tempered.
Yes. Page 61, section 510.8.1, duct cleanouts. Section was added and simply states that duct collection systems must have cleanouts every 20 feet. Any other questions on chapter 5? Okay, chapter 6 is duct systems. And if we go to page 70, section 601.5, item number 8 was added, and it simply says that it prohibits return air to be taken from an indoor pool, a swimming pool or its decks, and also adds 2 exceptions. And the first one says, where the air from such space is dehumidified in accordance with section 403.2.1, item 2, or the second exception states that dedicated HVAC systems serving only such spaces. That's pretty self-explanatory. Page 71. Oh, page ahead of myself. Okay, page 71, section 602.1, wiring. Section is regarding wiring in plenums. A few words have been changed, but intent remains the same. Same with section 602.2.1.2 and 602.2.1.3. That whole section there. Page 71, section 602.2.1.6. Foam plastic in plenums as interior finish or interior trim. It basically just states that this section must comply with sections 803.1 and 2600.9 of the International Building Code. There were 3 exceptions added to section 602.2.1.6, and they are covered in the IMC 2015 edition, section 602.1.6.1 through 602.1.2.1.6.3. You follow that, It
I
was-
don't follow
Okay. The difficulty of that was, instead of going into total detail with the exceptions, they're actually in the sections of the 15 book.
Right, my problem is that, does that mean you have to buy a 15 and an 18?
Well, no, you just have to pretty much read the exceptions.
But are the exceptions in the 2015 as you read the 2018? That's what I'm getting at.
Well, that's why I put that in there, Dave, because I went back to the 15. Dave?
Uh-huh.
I put it in there because when I went back to the 15,
Okay.
you know, so instead of going into the detail of all that, you know,
Sure, I get that.
but it's still in the code.
Right, I get it.
Okay.
I get it. But, so it's in the 2018 also?
Well, as the exceptions. In the 15, it was as these sections I read off to you.
Okay.
Follow what I'm saying here? The code does that for some reason or other, I don't know. Why couldn't they just left it the same?
Okay.
They switched it to an exception rather than.
Right, and I was trying to, maybe didn't do a good job of explaining it, that's what I was trying, the intent was.
Okay, I got it.
Sometimes exceptions are kind of written as requirements. Like you can't stop reading. Most of the time, you can stop unless you need an exception. But these are requirements. And I get into flames for it on both, and they end up with compliance with International Building Code also. Looks like it's requiring a thermal barrier similar to all plastics.
Page 71, section 602.2.1.7, plastic plumbing, piping, and tubing. An exception has been added which states plastic water distributing piping listed and labeled UL 2846. That was basically the only thing I seen changed there. Same page, 71, 602.2.1.8, pipe and duct insulation within plenums. Section has been added which states that the mounting procedure has to be within the ASTM E2231 and cannot flame, glow, smolter, smoke when tested in accordance with ASTM C411. Page 73, 603.5.2, phenolic ducts. This is a new type of non-metallic duct, and it must be installed in accordance with SMACNA phenolic duct construction standards. Page 73, section 603.8.2, sealing. Ducts shall be sealed, secured, and tested prior to concrete encasing or direct burial. Ducts shall be leak tested as required by section C403 in the International Energy Conservation Code. Page 73, section 603.9, joint seams and connections. Section has been modified. The code became less restricted for sealing duct of snap lock and button lock joints in conditioned spaces. Have any questions on chapter 6? Or any more questions? Chapter 7. Oh, too far. Chapter 7 deals with combustion air, and we have an existing code, and I kind of should have discussed this with you, Bruce, but staff recommends discontinuing the existing local amendment and deleting Chapter 7 in its entirety, due to the fact that the combustion air is covered in Chapter 3 of the International Fuel and Gas Code. Questions on that?
You're going to leave Chapter 7 in.
No, we're going to, instead of having the amendment that we have existing, we're going to delete that and then get rid of Chapter 7 altogether, is what purpose of that is. See, we have, Bruce, we have just a second here. Our existing amendment just says 701.2 attic spaces, and that's not even in the 15 code now anymore. This is it's an old amendment, and it just said attic spaces shall not be used for combustion air. Well, that's going to be covered in the chapter 3 of the IFGC. So I guess what I was trying to get through there, we don't really need this amendment in the IMC now, other than deleting deleting. Instead of it saying hereby reads as follows, just delete the whole chapter.
So the existing local amendment only deleted a portion?
Yeah, well, I didn't really want to get in too depth of this, but we can. Right now, 701.2 says dampered openings, okay? And in past codes, it was it wasn't the same. So, but our amendment didn't change. I was just trying to change this to where we didn't need that at all.
Okay, so the
We can-
existing local amendment, the existing amendment is going to change.
Right.
So we need to know what it's going to be.
Deleting section
In its
701.2.
entirety.
Okay.
So make sure the notes say, I'm changing the existing amendment.
We might want to visit with that a little bit more, Bruce.
Okay.
Chapter 8, page 83, chimneys and vents. And chapter 8 had no changes at all. Page 89 is chapter 9, specific appliances, fireplaces, and solid burning equipment. Section 901.4, solid burning fireplaces and appliances in group I-1, condition 2 was added and stated they are prohibited. Page 90, section 908.5 is water supply, and then once again, there's a existing amendment that just uses North Dakota State Plumbing Code. Page 93, section 929, high volume, large diameter fans. Section was added, and it's a low-speed ceiling fan that circulates large volumes of air and that is greater than 7 feet in diameter, as stated in definitions in chapter, on page 14. Any questions there? Chapter 10, boilers, water heaters, and pressure vessels. Page 97. Section 1006.6, item 13. Staff recommends keeping the existing amendment of North Dakota State Plumbing. Page 97, section 1007.2, operations. Staff recommends continue the existing amendment referring to the North Dakota Plumbing. Or excuse me, that was existing amendment deleting this section in its entirety. And then section 108.8 discharge, staff recommends that keeping the amendment North Dakota State Plumbing Code. So basically the only change in this whole chapter was the 3 amendments which we are recommending continuing. Chapter 11, Refrigeration, page 106. Section 1104.2, machinery room. Staff recommends continuing the existing amendment, and they added an exception number 3 to that code. The amendment itself added that section. Page 106, section 1104.2.2, industrial occupancies and refrigeration rooms. Exceptions 1 and 2 have been added. Both exceptions explain where detectors are not required. Page 109, section 1107.9, piping location. This section has been modified, listing 6 locations where refrigeration piping cannot be located. Any questions on Chapter 11? Chapter 12, page 113, hydronic piping. Page 117, section 1208.1, test. And a local amendment existed in the IRC that states that we require a hydronic test. So staff recommends adding the local amendment to the IMC code also for consistency purposes. Any questions on that? Page 117, section 1209.5. Thermal barrier required. R value is regulated by the International Energy Conservation Code. Okay, any questions on Chapter 12? Chapter 13, fuel oil piping and storage. There were no changes on that. And page 125, Chapter 14, solar thermal systems. Okay, as you can see here, I wrote that Chapter 14 has significantly increased in content and has clarified that the chapter applies only to thermal solar systems. The new text relies on 2 newly referenced solar product standards developed and maintained by the International Code Council and the Solar Rating and Certification Corporation. The text addresses the various types of solar systems designs, including direct and indirect systems and drainback systems. Much new text was added addressing systems designs and installation, protection from freezing and excess pressure and temperature, protection of potable water and building structure, piping installation and insulation, heat exchanger application, heat transfer fluids, access for roof-mounted equipment, and systems labeled and signage. And then page 125, I wrote this in there for section 1402.2, access. That just means that everything that's on that roof has to be accessible. The panel cannot interfere with it. We don't really see a whole lot of that around here, so. And that concludes the IMC. Anybody got any further questions on that? So how's everybody feel about just moving right along with the IFGC? Continue? International Fuel and Gas Code. Chapter 1 is on page 1, Scope and Administration. Page 1, Section 101.11, titles. And then page 3, Section 103.4, liabilities. Page 5, Section 106.6.2, fee schedules and fee refunds. Staff recommends we keep the existing amendments to those. Chapter 2 is definitions, and these definitions that you see right there, those 4, toilet, gas-fired, unit heaters, regulator, monitoring, and regulator series is basically the only definitions that I pulled out. Okay, chapter 3, general regulations. Page 20. Section 303.3, and that's prohibited locations. And we have an existing amendment, okay, that prohibits items number 3 and items number 4. Staff recommends discontinuing this amendment and keeping the 2018 verbiage as is. And we went through this 2 weeks ago with the IRC. This is the unvented heaters. Anybody got any questions on that? Dave, you understand where we're going there? Is for years, Fargo did not allow unvented heaters. And now we're going to allow them, just as the code says.
Okay. As long, and they're rated and everything for them.
Yeah, the code is very restrictive as to what, and they've come a long way. I mean, they got CEO cutoffs and the whole work, so why not?
Yeah, I'm fine.
And Menard sells them.
And I think that was the conversation that we had a couple of weeks ago, is that the heaters have improved to a point where they're safe to use,
Mhm.
in our opinion, so.
Okay, page 21, section 303.3. Item number 6 was added and allows dryers to be installed in toilet or bathrooms provided that there is a minimum of 100 square inches communicating to a space which is not prohibited. And I should have clarified that as gas dryers.
I think you should put that clarification in there.
Section 303.3.1, fireplaces and decorative appliances in Group I2, Condition 2, occupancies. This section regulates the requirements for gas fireplaces and appliances in Group I2 and Condition 2. And I thought this might bring up some conversation, because if you remember in IMC, they said that they were totally not allowed.
This is an I2, so this is an institutional, like a hospital or a nursing home or...
Right, correct, yeah. And then, and then what I was going to clarify is, in the IMC, we were talking about solid fuel burning equipment. This is gas. So if it's in an area like this, well ventilated, then the fuel and gas codes allow it, but the IMC does not allow wood burning.
Okay.
Page 22, section 304.6.1. Okay, this is getting into our combustion air, which we got rid of in the IMC, and we have amendments that are not allowing the figures 304.6.1, parentheses 1, and 304.6.1, parentheses 2. And we're recommending continue to not have these, because they're actually drawing, if you notice, they're drawing combustion air from an illegal location, which is the attic. Okay, then if you look at figure 304.6.2, second here, guys. You might want to go to your amendments for this one here. And basically what it's showing you here, as the drawing you see on page 23, it has been amended to the drawing that we have in the amendment, which basically just extends that duct up through the roof, so it's pulling the combustion air from outside.
So this basically, all this is about not allowing combustion air to be drawn from the attic space.
Correct. And that's why we put that, you see the configuration of the amendment there, Dave?
Yeah, I agree with it.
Okay. Okay, page 23, okay, we just went over that one there. Page 24. And that basically, section 304.11, combustion air ducts, item number 5, that also states that the ducts terminate in the attic, so we just have an amendment which states ducts shall not terminate in the attic space. Page 30. Section 310.2, CSST. All CSST which are not arc resistant must be properly bonded. And then if we go down to same page, section 310.3, arc resistant CSST. CSST that is arc resistant is considered to be bonded to the appliance it is connected to, therefore does not need additional bonding. Any questions on that? Okay, that'll conclude chapter 3. Any questions? Moving on to chapter 4, gas piping installations. And we're going to go all the way over to page 69. Section 403, where it says 403.3, that should be .3, other materials, and staff recommends continue the existing amendment which allows a listed LPG hose for natural gas use up to 50 feet for temporary heat only. We've had that for a long time now. Page 70, section 403.10.1, pipe joints. Code now acknowledges and approves ProPress. Page 70, section 403.10.1.1, staff recommends continue the existing amendment to add section which regulates what size pipe and how much gas pressure before joints need to be welded. Page 70, section 403.10.4, metallic fittings. Staff recommends continuing the existing local amendment which states metallic fittings shall comply with threaded fittings at sizes of 2.5 inches or larger and shall be not used except where approved. And then the section changed to 10.0 or 410.5. Gretchen. Okay. Okay, page 72. Section 404.11 through 404.11.4, protection against corrosion through protection of risers. Okay, section has been reworded and added dissimilar metals and protection of risers. Page 74, section 406, 70.4, test pressure measurements. Staff recommends continuing the existing local amendment which states that digital gauges used to measure test pressures shall be performed with gauges of 2 psi increments or less and have a range not exceeding 100 psi unless otherwise approved. Page 74, section 406.4.1, test pressure. Staff recommends continuing the existing amendment allowing not less than 25 psi in respective of design pressure. Page 76. Section 408.2, drips. Staff recommends continuing the existing amendment, removing the requirement for a drop to be provided at the outlet of a meter and be installed to constitute a trap for accumulative condensation to shut off a flow of gas. Page 77, section 409.7, shut-off valves in tubing systems. Shut-off valves installed in tubing systems shall be rigidly and securely supported independent of the tubing. Any questions on that? Page 79. Section 411.2, manufactured home connections. Staff recommends continuing the existing amendment, deleting item 1 and item number 2, which would just leave the listed and labeled connectors. Same page there, section 411.4. This injector, I didn't put this in the bills, and if we want to add it, I thought it was like pretty ridiculous. It states that for these Bunsen burners and facilities, you could either use a listed or unlisted hose. I just thought that was kind of odd.
That's 411.1.4 or 411.4? What is
411.4, Dave. I just thought that was kind of odd to be put in there.
Yeah, I guess the question is what they're saying, or what they're talking about is when you have a Bunsen burner on a laboratory table where they have the little, barbed
Yep.
outlet,
Mhm.
and that goes to the Bunsen burner, and that tube is probably, we've all been in science rooms, right? What's that tube? It's just a black tube, right? And
Right,
they're saying that's
But I mean,
acceptable.
they even to put that in there,
To what?
But what I was thinking is, we could just take a piece of your water line, go onto your refrigerator. That would work too.
Sure. The difference being is that that's not a connected device.
Mhm.
That's really up to the person in the science room using it or whoever, right?
Right.
And so that's a pretty hard one to regulate, isn't it? You'd have to go through and now inspect their Bunsen burners and the tubes connected to them, wouldn't you? I don't-
But it allows any type of hole.
Agreed, yeah, but how do you guys enforce that? Because the mechanical contractor's not installing that.
We're there, we're not there.
Yeah. So I guess that's what they're saying is it's really almost impossible for you to police that, right? I don't know. You guys would check those?
Well, I don't know that we're looking at each one of them, but I think it probably would end up falling in a fire code inspection.
Yeah, I would think so, and,
You'd
but
think
you
you'd be
guys.
buying those as a unit with the hose, so I don't know. It's kind of surprising that it wouldn't be just at least rated for
What it does.
gas service. I mean, it's connected to a Bunsen burner, but there must be some case out there. I wasn't familiar with this, I guess.
I don't even know
I was just trying to-
how much they put out.
Oh, pilot
The little hose.
light.
Yeah, I mean, it's not much, but again, I don't know how you guys would regulate that. That seems to me that
We'll look
comes
at
as
the
a-
little valve
Yeah,
box.
that's where
kit in
you're,
the final.
that's where you guys stop, and I would think the
Yep.
fire department would start at that point as far as, you know.
I was just trying to justify it hitting the code.
Seems, I don't know, seems weird to have in there, but I guess it's appropriate. The only thing I guess I would question on that is liability for the codes department. With it in there, they provide some hose that's leaky, causes a fire or a problem, and because we said we allowed it, or the code, because the code says it's allowed, is that appropriate? I would almost strike that.
But
and
there's
not-
many things in the code like that. I mean, you only, the required inspections will happen, and that's what we look at and inspect. So if there's no required inspection for the final Bunsen burner connection, we're never going to be there.
Sure.
And that's what we would say.
Yeah, okay.
There's 50,000 things in the code that we don't really inspect.
You know, and this might be interesting to take back and see how this came into international codes, because it could be that there was a jurisdiction requiring the use of like a flexible connector like
Sure.
they have to use on an
Steel,
appliance.
yep.
So maybe it came from a user so that they weren't required to have a listed appliance connection or something.
Yeah, because if you look at a listed, I mean, a UL listed gas hose, that's not what you're connecting to a Brunson burner. So,
We also have comments on liability.
Yeah, it might almost help you in that situation if if someone was to use one and have a problem with it, it was allowed by the code. You know, so the code is kind of defining where their responsibility starts by that.
You ready, guys?
yep.
Page 82, section 415.1, intervals of supports, same as the IMC. We got an amendment that states that every 2 feet you need support at the bend or an angle. And that will end chapter 4. Moving on to chapter 5, which is chimneys and vents. We're going to go to page 85, if I can get there. And section 501.8, appliances not required to be vented. Staff recommends discontinue the existing local amendment, removed item 8 and leaving the 2018 code verbiage as is. And that's basically our unvented heaters again. Page 86, section 501.12, residential and low heat appliances, flue lining systems. Staff recommends continue the existing local amendment to item number 1, which states clay flue liners must comply with the requirements of ASTM C315 or equivalent when each appliance connected to the masonry chimney has a minimum import rating greater than 400,000 BTUs. And staff recommends continue the existing amendment, adding subsections A and B to item number 3, which lists aluminum and stainless steel as other approved materials. Page 88, section 503.4.1. Plastic joints will have a UL 1738 listing and be installed in accordance with the manufacturer's installations instructions, basically added. Page 88, section 503.5.3, masonry chimneys. Staff recommends continue the existing amendment which states that masonry chimneys shall be built and installed in accordance with NFPA 211 and shall be lined as per section 501.12. Page 89, Section 503.5.6.1, chimney lining. Staff recommends continuing the existing amendment which states chimneys shall be lined in accordance with NFPA 211 and Section, I think I just did that. Page 89, Section 503.5.6.1, exception. Staff recommends continuing the local amendment which states that when one or more appliances venting systems, the secondary appliance shall, such as a water heater, is replaced and the primary heating system appliance remains. Page 89, Section 503.5.11, insulation shield. Okay, this section was added, but due to the fact that the B vent has to have a 1-inch clearance, the shields were always been required. Page 93, Table 503.8. This table was added and just gives clearance requirements for direct venting. Any questions on Chapter 5? Okay, moving on to Chapter 6, specific appliances. Page 126, Section 614.4, exhaust installation, basically the same as the IMC. It's just adding that dryer vents shall be sealed in accordance with Section 603 of the International Mechanical Code. Page 26, Section 614.4.1, exhaust termination, outlets, and passage. There again, same as the IMC. It just says that the passage of the dryer exhaust duct terminal shall be undiminished in size and shall provide an opening area of not less than 12.5 square inches. Page 126, Section 614.8.2, duct installation. Once again, the same as the IMC. Staff recommends continuing the existing local amendment, deleting the text, ducts shall not be joined with screws or similar fasteners that protrude more than 1/8 inch into the inside of the duct. The following text was added to the section, that's where dryer exhaust ducts are enclosed in walls or ceiling cavities. Such cavities shall allow the installation of the duct without deformation. Page 129, Section 621, unvented room heaters. And this is where it gets into, Dave, what we talked about earlier, where the code restricts it enough over these unvented furnaces or unvented room heaters. So the staff is recommending discontinuing the existing local amendment, which deleted this section in its entirety. Staff recommends leaving the 2018 code verbiage as it is. Any questions on that? Okay, page 130, section 623.2. Prohibited locations. And on the exceptions, item number 2 was added and states where the installation is designed by a licensed professional engineer in compliance with the manufacturer's installations instructions. Any questions on Chapter 6? Okay, Chapter 7, gaseous hydronic systems, no changes. Chapter 8, reference standards, no changes. And Appendix A, B, C, and D have no changes. So that concludes International Fuel and Gas Code. Any questions?
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
point, we'll move on to the review of previously covered sections. Occurring further review.
So I took a look at the list that Gretchen provided, and there's a few items on there. We'll take a few each meeting, so I thought we'd just go right down in order. I'll take the first three this meeting, and then we'll go as far as we can. We don't get too long. The first one was greenhouse, and I researched greenhouse. I don't think really is going to affect us. The definition came up, whether it's a lit environment, an outdoor lit environment, or an indoor. There's not anything in the light and ventilation requirements that even talk about greenhouses. Most of them are designed commercial spaces. There is some difference between like greenhouse that allows the public to come in, mercantile type greenhouse. There are some assembly type greenhouses, and they're just thrown back into the same requirements of those uses, requirements for assembly or mechanical. But there was no mention of greenhouses in the light and ventilation requirements. So there was a question about whether it's outside lit or glass. All the glass needs to comply with the glass requirements. If it's plastic, it needs to comply with the plastic requirements. So I don't see any issues with leaving everything the way it is. The next one was sound transmission. I went back and looked through our gypsum manual, which provides a lot of sound that has been tested, previously tested. And most of the floor assemblies did comply that I saw in that book, but most of the wall assemblies did not. Most of our apartment buildings are built out of wood. The steel seemed to comply. Steel wall assemblies with insulation, full insulation, fill the cavity. 2 layers of sheetrock might hit 50, but not the wood assemblies. They're generally 44 to 49. The sound transmission requirement required 50. So unless you put in the double staggered walls with insulation between every unit, and I know, Clay, do you do it on every building?
Well, in our apartments, there's usually an airspace between two sets of walls,
2 walls?
so you're kind of doing that, and part of that is to try to eliminate any vibration also. So once you disconnect it, I don't know if you looked at that particular wall, but I think that would probably get there.
Yeah, if you did 2 walls, it would, in essence, be 44 plus 44.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd be doubling up, and I'm sure it would meet the requirements of 50. So I think that's what Doug was saying, that a lot of them do, but I don't know if all of them do. And I think that's why Ron previously took this section out. It's not anything that we inspect. Again, it's not a required inspection that we look at sound. We require testing on your walls. That's what the book says. If nothing is information is provided, you need to do a test on your wall. So I think they took it out for that reason. I don't believe that everybody's doing the double wall. So I'm going to leave it up to you if you want to leave it in or not. I'm going to recommend removing it. So there is no requirements for sound. And that's what's been done in the past up until now.
Yeah, it may just be getting you into one more issue to have to inspect that's really already kind of handled. Anyway, I think when you look at, multifamily structures that are bigger structures, they're always 1 hour rated. So just by the meeting the 1 hour rated, they're going to be separated with the airspaces anyway.
If they have the airspace. If the walls that I saw in the gypsum manual, you can make a 1 hour wall that's not stagger stud, not double, and meet the requirement of the fire resistance, but you might hit 49. So,
Yeah.
I think some of it falls into the idea of what type of facility it is as well, whether it's multifamily or if it's higher-end multifamily. And, you know, I've been down the road where it was a requirement to have a really significant sound barrier between higher-end living style apartments and then doing just, you know, more basic standard multifamily where it was, like Clay was talking about, staggered wall with a airspace between them. Or if you're using hat channel and offsetting or something to that effect.
any hat channel
Something.
thrown in will bring you up to 50,
Right.
even on a single wall.
And even floor ceiling assemblies, it was kind of the same thing.
Most of them have a hat channel and comply.
So,
So that's what Doug was saying, is in general, most of them comply. I won't say that all of them would. Some of the, I mean, people aren't, they're starting to build smaller units again, filling lots. And you're right, with a condo or an apartment, same requirements in our world. There's no difference in anything in the code book on those two buildings. So it's just a matter of, are we going to request sound information on every apartment building?
Well, most apartment buildings have an architect involved already, isn't there? And
Yep.
isn't the architect working with the owner to determine what the owner wants for sound?
Yeah.
at times, you know, again, it matters to the client. So I've been down both sides of that avenue with certain clients where it's not really a priority, and then other ones are a significant priority. So again, you're eating up some square footage, but you're able to, you know, sell that unit or lease that unit based on some of those attributes that they can speak towards.
Yeah, it's almost somewhere where it's kind of market driven. Although I think there's some kind of minimums that everybody
Sure.
does, and then it can ratchet up from that.
You bet. I can't imagine you guys having to go out there and
Sound test.
doing sound testing. That seems like the bad use of resources, in my opinion.
But there are assemblies that have been tested, even the proprietary ones or even standard ones that comply. So if we don't see a double wall, that's what we're going to say. You're going to need to give us information
Mhm.
on how you're going to get to 50. And then maybe it's time. I mean, I like to think that we're as far from East Coast, West Coast, North, South. We're very conservative here, and that's what everybody has told Ron in the past. We don't want that requirement. Maybe it's time to do it.
So the 2018, it has that section in it?
They both do.
They
They're
both
both
do.
similar.
So
They have the
it's-
same requirement.
In 2015, the city made an amendment to delete it.
Yep,
Now
deleted
we're
the whole section.
Debating if we should have that same amendment or
Yep,
allow it.
that's the decision, whether to leave that section in or not. And a lot of direction I get is conservative also. Unless there's a reason to change, don't change.
So does like a twin home, that doesn't fall underneath this, would that be under the IRC instead of
Correct.
this? So this is anything, apartments, or what about
Row houses would,
fourplexes and things like that, that would,
row houses would,
okay.
and they can be built twin or row house style, independent, or in this code, they can be built either way.
Mhm.
I would think you may find this to be more on smaller buildings than large ones. Anyways, where you're probably going to see that different type of construction. And I don't know if that's ever risen to the point where you guys are getting complaints or different things within your office from tenants.
We delete the section so we get no complaint. If that section's in there, we'll see, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, it may produce more problems than it solves.
so you're looking at 5 decibels of sound difference, where most walls meet the 44, 45, and we leave it in, we require 50. So if somebody puts in that single wall with insulation, they're gonna end up either adding hat channel or putting in the double wall system.
Are you looking for a motion?
No, just your recommendation, that's what's gonna end up going in here and going to the commission.
Okay.
So I'll recommend to leave the amendment, removing the section, which has the requirements for the 50.
What were you seeing the floor systems coming in at?
Hmm?
What were you seeing the floor systems coming in at that you're looking at?
Most over 50 with the hat channel.
Yeah,
Yep.
so standard truss floor with 3/4 inch.
Yeah, even the double sheetrock, even the 1-hour wall with 2 layers of rock on both sides, complied.
Okay,
That's another option to the tenant separation, is add another layer of sheetrock. That made a big difference in the wall and the floor ceiling.
yeah, I know within that multifamily world that the main complaints they'll probably get is from a tenant above with hard heels on, banging around on a laminate floor. That's almost an impossible sound to keep. The only thing this would do is if long as their system is meeting that, at least the building is to whatever the code is, then it's just a matter of where you want to go from there. I know we go way above what is the norm on trying to reduce sound from floor to floor vertically. That is probably where you see it more than any place, but
Another reason Ron probably took it out, it's, most code issues are life, safety, health, and welfare. Does that fall into the health, bothered by the neighbor? So he probably just removed it.
yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't have my book. I don't have the book here today. I would have to dig into it a little bit more. There's more to it than just sound transmission
We can
through
table it
walls.
and bring it up again.
Yeah, there's
mean,
probably more to it than that. I think we might be, maybe it's not appropriate at this time to make a recommendation of that.
Okay.
Just if we're talking floor ceilings, if we're talking walls, are we talking exterior walls?
All tenant sep.
All
So
this is all just tenant
inside the
separation.
building, Yeah,
That's all that is.
but we can do that. We've had discussions. You can read the notes again, and we'll bring it up again at the end.
I think for me personally, I'm not sure I was here for that meeting, so maybe digging into it just a notch would be relevant, just for rather than making a dedicated recommendation to the council right now.
We can table it.
So after we make our recommendation, then it goes to commission hearing?
Yeah, so the way this works, everything you've listened to is gotten recorded, and that'll end up, in the end, going to commission as your recommendation for our codes to adopt.
Okay.
Everybody okay with
Well-
tabling it for now and bring it back?
Yeah.
So the last one that I was going to mention, erratas came up. I tried to get a definition of how ICC deals with errata and how they look at it, and they had nothing in writing. So I wanted to propose that. I did send you all the link to the errata section on the ICC website. And so what you need to know is errata is continually happening, and then it's most of the time fixing errors in the code. And like Ryan said last time, errata is never supposed to change the intent of the code. So normally when we see even a code section mistake, we find that and we still enforce the correct requirement. So if you look back in errata, and anybody can send in an errata change anytime to ICC. So errata is happening all the time. What happens here is if they find an errata that they're going to give you a notation of that. This code section showed up in the code, it had the wrong code section number, it's supposed to be this. So we don't spend all our time going back, looking for them and making changes. You'd be doing that full time. So you can look at those and see what they are. There's going to be minor corrections in the code. We will keep up on them ourselves. I don't think you have to worry about errata. It's always the building official's final decision anyway. So he makes interpretations of the code, and errata usually never changes that. Any questions on errata? I don't even think every errata makes it onto that list. If it's a spelling error or a grammatical error, it might not even be on the ICC chart. Things such as code section revisions will be on there. And we can usually catch those right away ourselves looking at it. It references a section that's not even pertinent to, and it's usually within a few numbers of that section anyway. So that's the three I thought we would go through today. And we'll, maybe whenever you want to bring that one up again.
Yep, sure.
We can do that. And then we'll start with Justin's next meeting.
Okay. Any other staff reports at this time?
No, no meeting next, on the 27th, correct?
Okay. I had mentioned to Gretchen that I'm going to send her in some vacation times that I'm gone here after the first of the year. I don't know if anybody else has got any things like that scheduled. Maybe we should get those in, just so we make sure we're, meetings are productive with winter vacations and that kind of thing. So anybody has anything scheduled, send along to Gretchen on email, and we'll make sure we got things covered for those meetings.
Yeah, we have, I think, 1 or 2 months at the end that we can still meet if we have to postpone.
I was just interested, if we get a couple people that are on vacation or something, maybe we want to move that meeting back. But most people now have those vacations scheduled, so if it's going to work that we got too many people gone, then we can readjust that schedule.
My vacations were in the TBD meeting, so wasn't expecting anything unless they get moved.
No, I know I've got one coming up in January, and but anybody else that has that, just send it in. We'll just try to get it,
Sure.
make sure we got it covered.
I think next meeting is January 10th,
Well-
and then 24th. So,
The ones in February were TBD, I think. I don't think there was anything, those were for what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So when you send the minutes out, why don't you reflect that right in the email and jog everybody's memory, they can send you something.
Yeah. Okay. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I would motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.